What is my biggest regret for my experience resigning at Google? We are going to get into that soon, so please make sure you listen to the whole episode. But first, let's get into that intro. You are now listening to the More Than an Admin podcast with Mallory Rothstein. For more, visit morethananadmin.com. And if you haven't already, make sure you go subscribe to this podcast. Thank you and enjoy this episode. Welcome back to this week's podcast episode where we will be talking about how to resign as an executive assistant. I'll be sharing my insights from leaving places like Google and Henry Schein, including some of the good, the bad, and the ugly, so that you can set yourself up for success whenever a time comes that you need to resign, especially if you've never done so before. Our roles are so unique. Remember, we support people and people have emotions. That's why it's important to be thoughtful and think critically before you resign. You should think about resigning in four parts. Part one is the pre resignation phase. Part number two is the day when you plan to officially resign. Part number three is the time between the day you resign leading up to your last day. And then there's part four, which is your last day and beyond. Now let's actually dive deeper into each of these parts, starting with the pre resignation phase. This is where I'll assume the majority of you are at right now. You might be actively thinking about resigning, or you might love your job, but know if there's a better opportunity that comes along, or you win the lottery one day, you'll be resigning. When I had a corporate job, I sometimes like to joke with my friends saying, I'll never announce if I ever win the lottery, but there will be signs, and resigning would be one of them. It doesn't matter which bucket you're in right now, but is what is most important is that you are already thinking about this topic so you can maximize the pre-resignation phase so that everything else along the journey will be a lot easier. There are 8 specific actions that you should take in this phase, starting with number 1, strengthen your mindset. You must make sure you're mentally prepared to deal with everything that could come your way. You might have the most amazing resignation experience, and that's incredible for you. But I don't want anyone listening to be naive to the fact that, again, we support people who have emotions and are often running at lightning speed dealing with complex issues. So, how they react to you resigning might not always be what you expect. This is why you must mentally prepare yourself for anything and everything that could happen. Number 2, find out when all of your benefits will expire and leverage that in your decision on your final end date. List out every benefit you have, including any of the following: healthcare, legal, stock vesting dates, 401k or other retirement plans, pet insurance, learning and development opportunities, and whatever else you might have from your job. For example, when I decided to leave Google on the 2nd of January, it was because I was able to keep my healthcare for the rest of the month, since I learned that you pay healthcare on the 1st for the whole next month. I don't know if that's everywhere, but it's definitely something you want to check. Originally, I thought I was going to leave on December 31st, but I thought, why not wait a couple days and then be able to have a month's worth of healthcare while I kind of jump started this next chapter of my life? This step is especially important if you're resigning to run your own venture like myself or going to have time between jobs. You want to be able to have a full understanding of your own potential extra expenses that you didn't even need to worry about when you worked for a corporation. Number 3, make sure you have copies of anything you might need post leaving. Do not wait until you resign to do this, and I'll go into more about why later on. I'm not saying take anything confidential, but think about things like your employment offer, employment contract, any performance reviews, any recognition awards or emails, any certifications, or any kind of emails that might make your day one day when you look back. Even think about photos you might have taken for team events that are on your company phone or laptop that you really want, that are okay for you to have. Please learn from me and do not wait. I waited and it stressed me out tremendously during my last week to remember everything I wanted, which brings me to number 4. Number 4 is wipe all of your corporate devices like phones, laptops, iPads, or whatever else of anything personal. I've known a lot of assistants to use their corporate phones as personal ones because they don't want to have to carry 2 devices. If this is your case, please make sure you take everything off of it before you give it back if you're required to return your devices. I always advise assistants to have your own personal laptop and phone, even if your company gives you one, because you never know what can happen. Regardless, you should wipe everything unless it's against your own company policy to do so. Some of you might be thinking, but Mallory, what do you even have to hide? I have nothing to hide, but I definitely was logged into maybe my personal Amazon or ESPN accounts on my Google laptop because I'd sometimes travel with only my work laptop and watch TV while I was traveling, which again, I don't think really was against any company policy. I don't know who is going to have access to these devices. We don't know afterwards once you leave. So to me, it's just a precaution to take that you want to wipe anything that you don't want potentially someone like in IT or anyone else to have access to. But you do what your own gut tells you to do. This is just, again, my advice from my own experience. Now to number 5, write your resignation letter. You can look up free templates online, but it's pretty simple. You can write it as long or short as you want. Just make sure it includes your formal intent to resign from your role on whichever team, at whichever company, on whichever date. You write it with the same header as you would any kind of cover letter. When I resigned at Google, this is the exact official resignation letter I submitted, minus the real name of my manager to protect their privacy. Dear Sally, please accept this letter as my formal notice of resignation from my role as administrative business partner in core labs at Google. My last day of employment at Google is January 2nd, 2024. I'll always be grateful for my time at Google. Thank you for everything. Best, Mallory Rothstein. It was short and sweet. On the flip side, when I resigned from Henry Schein, mine was a page long that I will not read, but it went into more detail of my overall time at Henry Schein and reasons for leaving. I went longer for two main reasons. One was that I was so nervous having to tell my manager face to face that I was leaving. So having this longer letter was kind of like a script for me to keep myself focused and prevent me from word vomiting, which, if you know me, I tend to do when I'm nervous, unprepared, or sleep deprived. The second reason is that I had a bit of a lack of trust in a few people around the company. So if any rumors came back to me, I wanted to have this letter to say, hey, this is actually what I said when I resigned. So if you heard anything else, it's false. Something about me is I love my receipts and being able to show people exactly what I said. The point is that you can write your official resignation letter however you want, but know you want to submit it in writing, whether that's via email or printed. And if you print it, I highly recommend signing your signature to make things even more official. My last point here is to always remember that whatever you write is set in stone. So if you want to write something flattering or scathing, just know it can't be taken back. So be careful either way. Next up, number 6, create a proposal for a transition plan. This is optional, but I think every assistant should do this in most cases, unless you're leaving under really bad terms, because it's simply the right thing to do. In this proposal, you want to list out all of your roles and responsibilities with access to any planning docs, sheets, external accounts or subscriptions with your passwords, etc., which hopefully you already have. Then you want to add dates for when you think you should fully transition the work to someone else before your end date. If you have anyone in mind from your company who can be the temporary coverage, list them out or propose for the company to hire a temporary assistant. The thing is, your manager and team might completely disagree with your plan or simply not use it. But I think being proactive can help put everyone at ease that they don't need to think of everything from scratch. And it helps you think about what you'll need to transition anyway to keep yourself organized. This plan is not something to be submitted with your resignation letter, but rather you should wait to see how your manager first reacts and only bring it up if it seems appropriate to do so then, or wait until the next day once the dust settles. You don't need to have every little detail set in stone, but it is good to have something in mind so that if your manager does ask you what you think that, the plan should be, you have something already thought out. Now, number 7, be very careful who you tell you're even thinking about resigning, especially before your manager. Every single time I've ever resigned, whether it was from an assistant role or any kind of role, I always first discuss with friends or mentors outside of the company I was working for. In 2021 and 2022, my therapist and high school best friend were the only two people I really spoke to the most about planning my Google exit. You want to first get an outside perspective from people who are not biased. If you tell your close friends at work that you are even thinking about leaving, mentally prepare yourself for their reactions because they might try to potentially convince you to stay longer or change your mind completely. You might even cause them to freak out thinking about all the work that they might have to do once you're gone. Or worse, they could tell someone else, whether intentionally or unintentionally, and have to get back to your manager, even if you're not 100% set on leaving. Just be careful and use discernment with this. It's not my biggest regret, but I definitely wish I told less people I was thinking about leaving Google before I officially announced it. Google's a massive company, and I was connected with just so many people through different projects across Google that I didn't want to have to tell everyone at once or everyone message me at once if they found out all at the same time. I thought I'd be completely overwhelmed, so I decided to tell people in phases. But I think looking back, it actually would have been better to do it that way. While this won't be a big concern for the majority of people listening to this podcast, what will apply to everyone is thinking of who and when you will tell different sets of people. List out everyone at your company who you will need to share your news with so you don't forget. For example, this might be your manager, the leader or leaders you directly support if none of them are your direct manager, potentially a chief of staff or other parts of the executive team, your lead admin if you have one, your admin team, the rest of your larger team or company that you support, and then externally if you want to announce via LinkedIn or any other social media platform. My biggest advice is to make sure that your manager is the first or second person to know because I made this mistake once and I feel really bad afterwards. I'm such a bad liar and could not lie when they asked me who knew before them. I know I upset them a bit, even though I really had good intentions of why I didn't tell them first, which is too complicated to explain over this podcast, but you should definitely be ready for the question of who else knows, and you can decide how you answer that. Now, number 8, you're going to ask yourself if there's anything this company can do to keep you. This is extremely important. One of the things I find most assistants don't think about before they have a conversation with their manager about leaving. You want to really think if there's anything that they could do, whether that's a salary amount or a benefit that would realistically keep you. And if so, write that out beforehand so you stay firm to it. If there is nothing, please do not let anyone convince you to stay longer than you want or rescind another better offer. I've always been asked if there's anything that could be done to keep me, and my answer is always no, because to me, if I've decided to leave, I'm leaving. But for some of you, you might actually want to stay in your position if they gave you a salary bump or more responsibilities or a title change. Just make sure you don't get swayed to stay longer if what they promise to do isn't in writing and implemented right away. Ask them to write out a new employment offer and contract if you do decide to stay. Otherwise, politely say no and continue to say no until your final end date if they keep asking you, which they really might. So just prepare yourself. And I'm just thinking of a number 9, which this bonus one is to put a calendar invite on your personal calendar for the date you will announce your resignation and invite whoever you want to hold you accountable. I did this with both Henry Schein and Google, even though I switched my dates a few times for both. I forget who told me this tip, but thank you to this person because it was super helpful in holding me accountable and having people in my life who are ready to support me before and afterwards. To be able to physically see something on my calendar was also a good reminder to stay committed to my plan. I tried to be as thoughtful as I could every time I told my manager in terms of figuring out when it would be best given what they were going on as leaders and what our team was going through. But the truth is, there will never be a good time. So I say go with your best judgment. Remember that most leaders would never plan their careers around you and your life. So make sure you do what is best for your own timelines first. I know this is a lot to probably consume right now, but like I said, the pre resignation part 1 phase is the most critical part in anyone's resignation journey. Make sure you re listen to this episode a few times and take notes to make sure you really remember everything because these insights will help you. But now we are done with part 1 and it's on to part 2, aka the day you plan to officially resign. On the day that you resign, you want to make sure you look and feel your best. So make sure you get enough sleep the night before so you can wake up feeling refreshed, ready to dress in something that makes you feel awesome. If you're resigning in person, bring your resignation letter printed. But if you're resigning virtually, just make sure you have it easily accessible so you can submit it right after your conversation. Remember that if you spend the time to thoughtfully prepare in the pre resignation phase, you should feel confident in your abilities to have this conversation. Stick to your script of your resignation letter. If you decide to go with a shorter version, then just make sure you write out a separate script or notes so you don't blank in the moment. Because let's be real, we all can do that every once in a while if we are that nervous. I trust that each of you are smart enough to know how to speak to your own leaders, so I won't and can't give you an exact thing to say, but here are a couple reminders. Don't forget to say thank you for the opportunity you were given, unless, again, you're leaving on really bad terms. Maybe even share one or two things you'll miss or have learned through their leadership. Remember to bring up your proposal for your transition plan and further announcements. I'd also remember to say something along the lines of that you will do whatever you can to make the transition easiest for them and everyone else. Most leaders will be worried about a transition, so if you can ease their minds that you aren't just leaving them to dry, then it might make things easier for everyone, including yourself. During this conversation, something that might come up is them asking you to adjust your end date. What is very important is that you prepare yourself that you could be let go immediately. You might be asked to leave early, even after you agreed upon a later date because they found your replacement sooner than expected, or they might even ask you to leave later due to whatever they need your help with. This is why you do all the steps I listed in the pre resignation phase, just in case your timeline doesn't go according to your own plan. I know there are different laws in different places, so please make sure you look up if it's legal to let someone go after they say they want to resign. And again, prepare yourself for any reaction. I've definitely heard of each scenario happening before, which is why I want everyone to prepare themselves for each one. When I announced at Henry Schein, they accepted my end date. And when I was at Google, I was asked to stay longer. I essentially gave 2 months' notice for Henry Schein and 4 months' notice for Google. Looking back, I think giving a month max notice is good enough. And I'll explain later why, if I ever resign again, I won't give more than that. Make sure that whenever you finish your conversation, you ask how they want your official resignation letter printed or via email. If there are any adjustments made during your conversation, make those amendments before you submit it. My advice is to follow up in an email, writing out everything that was agreed upon and attach your resignation letter. I forgot to do this before, but you might even want to BCC your personal email for your own records, or at least print out the email so you have it. You should definitely make sure you have copies of your resignation letter too. I used my personal accounts to draft my resignation letter before I even submitted it on my corporate accounts. After you speak with your manager, please set time aside for yourself, whether that's taking a walk, eating or drinking something you love, having a good friend or family member call you, or listen to a certain song that always cheers you up. It is not always easy to resign, and you don't know how your manager will react, so make sure you plan in advance to have your evening free. Be intentional about your self care plan, because to me, the next part is actually the toughest to get through. So, part three is that time between the day you resign leading up to your last day. This has always been my least favorite phase of the resignation process. Your goals during this time period should be as follows. One, make sure you continue to crush your role until your last day. I am serious about this. Do not be one of those people who get super lazy, because last impressions are as important as first impressions. Number two, execute the announcement and transition plan that you agreed upon with your manager. Number three, write out any final emails that you want to send during your last week. Copy your personal email or include your LinkedIn profile if you want people to have a way to stay connected with you afterwards. And then number four, self care, self care, self care. Yes, I had to say self care 3 times, because you will always find out who really rocks with you once you announce you're leaving somewhere. And on the flip side, you will also find out who doesn't. I was pretty shocked both times at Henry Schein and Google about how some people treated me. Once after resigning at Henry Schein, I confided in someone about some of the reasons for leaving, and this person really went straight after our conversation to higher leadership, complaining about me, misconstruing everything I had shared. I mean, I was so embarrassed and devastated that I thought I could trust this person, and then they proved to be someone who was really just waiting to, I think, go to higher leadership to make themselves look good. And how did I find this out? Well, that's a secret I'll never tell, but I'm sharing this because I really did learn in this moment that you should always be careful about who you trust after you say that you're leaving somewhere, because certain people will use your leaving as a way to make themselves look more loyal to leadership. After I announced leaving Google, man, those months were my least favorite out of my 7 years. One day I was on this impromptu call with my admin team of four, and our lead admin, I don't know what this person drank that day, but they just completely out of nowhere went off on everyone on our team about this very minor misunderstanding about my transition plan. This person is berating each of us as if we are their children for about 45 minutes, and even says to me during this time, basically a bunch of nonsense that includes that it would have been better for everyone if I had left the team after 1 month, not four. I had never cried in any professional setting until this moment. I just started bawling. And what surprised me most with that was that the supposed leader of our team didn't even stop to check in with me one time during that call or once afterwards. We have still not spoken for what is it now, maybe 10 months. And this was someone that I had looked up to as a mentor, a friend, a work mom, and I had gone above and beyond for to onboard them to our team when they had joined. I realized during this moment that some people will get close to you when it's convenient for them and best for their career. But when they feel that you aren't of value anymore to them in their career, they will dispose of you very quickly. And I'm sharing these examples with the sole purpose to prepare you all for the absolute worst that can happen, especially if you're young and you've never resigned anywhere before. But let me also say that there will be beautiful moments of people sharing the impact that you've had on them. You'll find out who will be the people that you'll want to invest time into staying in touch with them afterwards. While at Henry Schein and Google, I will say that there were tons of people who were beyond kind and did support my decision to leave. And even if I don't talk to each of these people anymore, I still remember them. And if any of you are listening to this and you want to call or text me to get back in touch, I will always answer because I really do believe it is so important to remember the people who are there for you when a lot of people also weren't. And one last thing I want to point out, because I'm remembering it randomly right now, is that you should always try to train your replacement to be better prepared than you were. I will always say that I hope that I'm the worst admin my leaders ever had once I left them, because that I trained their next admin to be set up for greater success than I had been. Please don't be someone who wants the next person to fail or look worse than you so that your leader misses you. It's just an unethical thing to do and not how we as admins want to treat each other. It's sad I even have to include this, but I've heard of way too many stories of admins being set up to fail intentionally, and it's just not cool. All right, we're finally at the last stage, which is number 4, your last day and beyond. During your last day, simply remember to return any corporate devices that you need to return, get anything else that you need off of your corporate devices, send those final emails, and celebrate that you made it to your last day. When I left both Henry Schein and Google, I didn't have anything lined up, so I had a lot of time to recharge and reflect. But my hope for anyone listening is that you've given yourselves at least a week before jobs to have any time to recharge and reflect. Highly recommend doing that if your next job will allow it, because it will only help you be set up for greater long term success. And then after you leave, you should also remember to update your LinkedIn, resume, and professional bio whenever you feel appropriate if you have any of those things. That's really much it for part number 4. I hope you've gotten already some value from this basically step by step guide on how to navigate the resignation journey. Before we wrap up, I want to emphasize one thing and then share my biggest regret from resigning at Google. The one thing I want to emphasize is that no matter how thoughtful and good intention you might try to be in your resignation journey decisions, you cannot control the outcome of how people will perceive or treat you afterwards. Let's say this again. No matter how thoughtful and good intention that you might try to be in your resignation journey decisions, you cannot control the outcome of how people will perceive or treat you afterwards. I'm saying this twice because most of the admins I know, probably including all of you listening, want to do the right thing and don't want to hurt anyone in the process of resigning. But the truth is that resigning is like breaking up with someone. You should not guilt yourself for doing what is right for you, and you should not second guess your decisions just because someone else is upset unintentionally. Please remember that. And now on to the last thing, which is me sharing my biggest regret during my experience from resigning at Google. And that is that I only wish I gave 1 month's notice, leaving in the early fall versus leaving in early January. Leaving during the holiday time couldn't have been a worse decision because it is chaotic for everyone personally and professionally. No one wants to transition work during the holiday time, nor does anyone really care that you're leaving. And that's to no one's fault because it is the freaking holiday time. Everyone should be focused on themselves during this time. And I didn't think of any of this when I agreed to January 2nd, but I definitely learned my lesson. I also wish I did leave after 1 month, not because of what one lead admin said, but rather in general, it was difficult for me to navigate certain dynamics I didn't expect. Like most of the time when I'd meet with someone, they try to convince me to stay longer, which on one hand was flattering, but it also meant I had to continually defend my decision making which became a bit exhausting. Other times people would open up about their desire to leave and how they couldn't do so. So I started having this weird guilt buildup that I was leaving everyone behind and that I wish I could just bring people with me, but obviously I couldn't. It became a really mentally draining 4 months for me, trying to navigate everyone's reactions while also trying to do the best job I could until my very last day. I mean, I left Google at 11:30 p.m. So on my last day, so they really got the most that they could out of me. But I always think to myself that clearly God had his reasons and wanted me to go through all of this. So I'm taking these lessons and sharing with all of you so that you could apply what I've learned in your own journeys. We know that our roles are unique, so I don't think 2 weeks is honestly the best if you can allow more time. I'd say 1 month for a transition is fair and more than enough time for your company to have, at the very least, a quality pipeline of potential candidates. I wish I gave only 1 month's notice for both times I resigned, but I will say I still think I did the right thing, even if it meant at the expense of my own happiness. So while I say this is my biggest regret, I really do believe I did my leaders right both times. Okay, I could go on and on, but I think I should stop here. I realized through recording this podcast episode that I might need to come out with a mini course or an ebook on resigning and get more people's perspectives on this topic because there is so much more I could cover, including more specific examples. If you ever do want one on one help on how to best navigate your own personal resignation journey, I provide coaching and mentorship, so I'm happy to support you throughout your entire process. Email team@morethananadmin.com or DM me anywhere on social media so I can share how you can sign up for my coaching program. If you are watching on YouTube, please like or comment under the video if you got anything out of this. If you are listening over Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or anywhere else, please share on LinkedIn with one takeaway that you got so others can learn too. Please subscribe on whichever platform you are listening to because it is free and you will make me get all the warm fuzzies for you. I hope everyone has a great rest of your day and be prepared for another drop soon on another very important topic for our community. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the More Than an Admin podcast. Make sure you have subscribed, and if you're feeling a little generous, please also leave a review because we love your feedback. And remember to share this podcast with those around you. If you're looking for more content, check out morethananadmin.com, our YouTube channel, or follow us at More Than an Admin on all platforms. If you're looking to connect directly with me, you can find me at Mallory is More on all platforms or search for me on LinkedIn. Let's continue together to influence how the world views administrative professionals and help admins embrace all aspects of their identity to become their best selves. Remember, you are more than your job title and the best is still yet to come. I'll talk with you soon.